Erik Spoelstra is the new head coach of Team USA basketball. Is that a good move for the Heat? Plus, we open up the mailbag about Bam Adebayo's offense, the starting lineup, and the team's keys to success on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio. I'm here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day, and today we're opening up the mailbag. We've got questions about trading for Giannis and Lauri Markkanen, more questions about what the Heat should do with their starting lineup, and we'll get into all of that here in a second. But before we get into our questions, we got to start with the news that broke right before we started recording here, David, that Erik Spoelstra will be taking over for Steve Kerr as head coach of Team USA for the 2028 Olympics. Now, this was expected. Steve Kerr has talked about that last Olympic run probably being his last. Erik Spoelstra is the lead assistant. Everybody sort of knew, kind of the next Team USA head coach in waiting. So this is not surprising, but it's still really cool news, right? Like, this is an awesome opportunity for Spo. Super prestigious, not just for Erik Spoelstra, who in this position now sort of just elevates himself as the head coach of all head coaches. If you think about Steve Kerr and what this meant for his career, and before him, like Mike Krzyzewski and all these guys, or Mike Krzyzewski,
Him too.
and him also. This is such a prestigious opportunity, not only for Erik Spoelstra as the head coach, but also for the Miami Heat as an organization to have their head coach have this position for, a really important organization.
Yeah, it did feel like it was something that was likely to happen, and yet Steve Kerr, older, getting the nod over Spoelstra, and it was a good run for Steve, and yet you knew that Erik was going to take over at some point, and that he's going to do an amazing job at it. And it is absolutely an honor to be recognized that way as the top coach in the NBA. And that's how he's been viewed for a long time. I know a lot of fans disagree with some of his coaching strategies, and there are snafus along the way because he is a coach and because that's just the nature of the business, is you're always going to make mistakes and not everybody's going to be happy with the job that you do. But that is not to say that he can't do an amazing job of coaching high-level players and figuring out a way of getting the most of a roster the way he has so often for the Heat. And he's going to do an incredible job of being able to coach some of the top players in the league and be able to probably carry them to a medal contention, because that's just the way Erik Spoelstra is. He won't settle for anything less, and he's going to put the best group out there that puts him in a position to win as well. So I'm looking forward to Bam and Spoelstra both winning gold medals together as the future of Team USA basketball. That's an exciting thing.
So let's talk about that, right? This means that I think Bam has a really good chance of making the 2028 roster, which he probably already did as an incumbent. But Spo's going to want one of his guys, and it figures to be Bam, who obviously has a couple of gold medals already, a tone setter, defensive anchor, all of these things. So I think this means that Bam has a really good chance of making that 2028 team.
Yeah.
Steph has already basically said he's done. LeBron James will be 43. I'm not going to count him out on anything.
Never.
But I also don't know that he's going to be part of that team. Kevin Durant is a similar sort of situation. LeBron hasn't ruled it out, but he's going to be 41 at that point, I think. We're getting up there now. So there's a real chance here that when Erik Spoelstra takes over, it'll be a Team USA with no Steph, no LeBron, no Durant. Anthony Davis, another one of those older guys dealing with some health concerns of his own, right? He's got to wear goggles for the rest of his career now and all these things. Like, is he going to be part of Team USA? I think the invite will be there. But who knows, right? So this could be a real tough first year. Now, alongside Bam, I think Anthony Edwards inside track, Devin Booker should be part of it. Jason Tatum will be a part of it. Cooper Flagg, who I think is almost guaranteed a spot on that roster as long as things go as planned with him, because he was a standout, during the practice portion of Team USA in Vegas this last time around. So, those are some big names. Those are some good names. But you think about the guys that delivered the gold medal. It was Steph hitting that shot. It was LeBron James and Kevin Durant being dominant. Those guys probably aren't going to be part of that 2028 team.
No, I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't expect Anthony Davis to be a part of that either. I think he said as much that he was just looking forward to playing again with LeBron, knowing that LeBron was coming back for the last Olympic tournament. So I don't know that he's going to do that in the future. But I mean, there are a lot of young American stars that I think are capable of being that next phase. I mean, guys like Jalen Brunson. I think he'd be a part of Team USA basketball for sure. I'm trying to think of other names off the top of my head, and I'm sure that there were. I mean,
I think does John
Trae
Morant
Young?
and Zion Williamson figure things out? Who was the name? What was the name you said?
Trae Young. I mean,
Trae Young is another option. Absolutely. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton, right? You're going to want him probably on that roster again. Do any other Heat players get a look? I mean, we don't really know what the roster is going to be in 2028 necessarily, but let's say Tyler Hero is still on the team. I mean, no Steph, they're going to need shooting. How many great American players are better shooters with an upward trajectory in their career where they could be arguably peaking at their career in 2028 than Tyler Hero? I wouldn't go so far as to predict it, David. Just don't get me wrong here. But I'm just saying, I don't know that I'm ruling it out.
No. Absolutely. I think Hero would be in contention. I'm looking at other teams here. Donovan Mitchell.
Yep.
Cade Cunningham.
Yep. Cade Cunningham, definitely. He's definitely on that team. Evan Mobley.
Banchero.
Banchero's definitely on that team, I think, for sure.
And there's a lot of options there. I think it's going to be an interesting choice here. Obviously he doesn't get final say, but he'll be working together with Grant Hill and the rest of the Team USA. Operations there to try and figure out his team. So you figure it would probably be something similar to what he would do in terms of building a Miami Heat team, but he just has his choice of a lot of great players to choose from. So
doesn't have to go the undrafted route on this one.
Yeah, but does he go Tayshaun Prince? Does he go outside the box and figure out a guy you know what, I really want a incredible wing defender out there.
Well, we saw last year, right? Derek White, everybody recognizes Derek White's an awesome player, but he's not one of the best 12 in the league, right? And so he I think every roster needs that guy. So It's a good point. It's who's that guy? Now, we'll see, right? The 2020, there's a lot of time for things to shape up. I mean, heck, there's a couple of guys that can be coming out. Boozer's kid could come out and be awesome right away and maybe make a push to be on this team. But
is it before the Olympics that he takes over, or before the World Championships in a couple of years? Because I think didn't Kerr lead that group as well in the World Championships that I think take place in 2026, 2 years before the Olympics. So
it'll be 2027 World Cup and then the Olympics in 2028.
Okay, fair enough. So there he is.
There it is.
So that's
now I don't want to do the thing oh man, now Spo could start recruiting all kinds of stars. He's the head coach of this team, but maybe this could help Spo start recruiting some stars to Miami.
I mean, it's interesting because Kerr, it doesn't really feel like he was ever quite in that position. Golden State was a roster that was pretty set for a long time with Steph and Dre, and
he took over right after during the Durant stuff too. I mean, he took over basically the Warriors were the Team USA team,
right? And Klay Thompson obviously too. So that team was pretty set for a good long time and still able to stay in championship contention. I think for Spoelstra, I think Miami is such a huge appeal for so many young players. They love the idea of playing in South Florida, and they should. And then on top of that, I think Erik Spoelstra really gets to show the kind of person he is. We've already seen him bond and connect with a guy like Anthony Edwards. Not to say that Edwards is on Miami's radar or anything like that, although he probably should be. And yet, that he's a guy who just loves coaching these players and loves talking to them and connecting with them on a human level. And that's what he's able to bring out the best of them and really work together with them to help maximize their futures. And I think that's a big part of what makes Spo one of the best coaches in NBA history. So for him to be being able to mentor these guys and work together for the bonding experience, the way he talks about trips on the road, and the way he's spoken about the Olympics, just an opportunity for us to focus on basketball, but also get to know each other on a personal level. This is going to be a huge opportunity for him. So I think it would be disingenuous to not say that this is an incredible opportunity for him to not necessarily recruit players. I don't think he'll ever be so overt and be like, hey, there's always a spot waiting for you in Miami kind of thing. But he just has to show who he is, who he's been for the longest time. And I think that's enough for people to say, you know what? I believe that guy. Because if there's one thing that players want with head coaches, look, players are going to do whatever their players want. That's what the nature of basketball, especially at the professional level. Games are won by players. As much as coaches help manage personalities, the players win the games on the floor. But they want transparency. They want honesty. They want communication lines to be open. They want access, because a player might have questions and they want to be able to talk to somebody
and
get
a chance
clear,
to win,
answer.
right? And knowing that your coach can help you win. And if Erik Spoelstra is out there winning gold medals, there it is. Proof of concept. Like, hey, I can win a gold medal. I can win a world championship with this guy as my coach. Why can't I win an NBA championship with this guy as my head coach? I mean, that stuff matters.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. More than 50% of NBA GMs still say that Erik Spoelstra is the best coach in the league, despite the last 2 years that the Heat have had. That was according to the NBA GM survey that came out this morning. Last thing on this, Anthony Edwards. You mentioned his name. Just want to point one thing out. He will be going into the final year of his current contract right after the 2028 Olympics.
Uh-oh.
Spo, give that man a starting job on Team USA. That's all I'm saying. I want him starting for that team in the Summer Olympics. We're going to open up the mailbag next. We're going to talk about lineups. We're going to talk about Bam's struggles offensively during the preseason. What is a Giannis trade package? All of that and more coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Prize Picks, playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on play projections, whether it's Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. You'll love Prize Picks, adding so much to make it so simple for you. You can make your lineup in just under a minute. It can add this new feature called Stacks. If you want to ride with a player, you can select their passing yards or rush yards or touchdowns all in one line. There's so many different things that you can do via Prize Picks, and it makes it fun and easy and quick to get what you want. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. We'll be right back.
Let's open up the mailbag here. We're going to start with this question from Adam, who writes in, what do you think the biggest key to the Heat's success this year is? And can this team be a top 6 team in the East? David, we got a bunch of mailbag questions I want to get to, so we're going to go through these probably a little bit quicker than we usually do. But to me, the biggest key for Miami is offense. There's a reason why it's been such a point of emphasis by this coaching staff. And you've heard that even from incumbent players. Like, wow, you obviously always coach both sides of the ball, but we have never seen Spo go at it this way in terms of coaching up the offensive side of the ball. So that to me is the ultimate key. We know that there's a pretty high floor to what this team is going to be defensively, as long as you have Spo and Bam and then some of the other players on this roster. But they need to get out of the basement offensively. We're already seeing some of that work being taken in the preseason. So to me, it just comes down to offense.
100%. They just need to be able to find a way to generate points more easily, to be able to increase their pace, to put up more shots, to hit more from the perimeter. All the basics, and at the same time still draw free throws to be able to get to the line and help boost those numbers. They need to be able to put up points, because I don't think they have that dominant player that you can go to in clutch situations and be like, hey, you know what? It's a 99-98 game. Who's going to get us our bucket in the last few seconds? It's not good enough. This team is not good enough and doesn't have that one player capable of doing that. You need to be able to put up points to build a comfortable lead, because you're going to squander some as well, given some of the concerns that this team is going to have defensively.
In terms of being a top 6 team in the East, I think it's doable. In the wake of the Tyler Hero surgery and injury news and all that, I was a little bit like, you know what, maybe they're just doomed to being back in the play-in tournament. But I don't know. After a while, it sounds like Tyler's going to be back hopefully pretty soon, that this is going to be something that he can come back before the new year. And if that's the case, I still think that there's a pretty good runway for this team once Hero comes back. And I'm starting to buy the things that they're installing here in the preseason. I think there is talent on this roster. We still haven't even seen it fully healthy, right? We haven't seen Davion Mitchell. We haven't seen, obviously Tyler Hero yet with this roster, but top 6, I think you've got, look, Cleveland, New York at the top, obviously. I would probably in pen in some order, not necessarily in this order, but put Atlanta, Orlando, and Detroit as teams that I think are definitely making the playoffs, not need to go through the play-in. So that's 5 teams. Then you start to get in this mix at 6, where I think there's a big group. It's Miami, Indiana, Boston, Toronto. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other teams, but Milwaukee, exactly. Yeah. Like there's a bunch of teams right in that mix there. And so is it possible? Yes. Would I bet on it? I don't know. But I want to know when Tyler Hero is coming back before I make any of those kinds of bets.
Absolutely. There's the potential there. And I think we're both believing cautiously optimistic about this team that they can do more, because they do have a greater depth, I think, that they've had in years past. They just are lacking that kind of player at the top, and it just, I'll echo what Spoelstra said to us at Media Day, that he just is looking for somebody to pop, and I don't know who that is. It could be somebody on the roster that we haven't seen yet. Maybe it's a rookie like Kasper Giannis, who knows? But somebody needs to be able to pop to give this team a chance to win at a higher level, because they've got the depth, they've got a lot of great pieces, and at the same time, somebody just needs to find a way to stand out and provide a spark that we haven't seen yet.
And we've already seen a little bit of whatever is less than a pop from Jović, right, in his debut. Jaime's had his moments. Kel'el Ware, certainly. Jović looked like the best player on the team for the first 2 preseason games. Like,
yeah,
percolating before the pop. That's what's happening right now. Pablo writes in, hypothetically, what does a Giannis trade package without Bam Adebayo include? And what state would that leave the roster post-trade, assuming we'd give up the farm of youth and draft assets in order to keep Bam and get Giannis? I think it's probably better to work backwards in terms of the way that this question was framed. Like, what does that roster look like? Well, and then we'll know what was included in the trade package from there. But I think if you're trading for Giannis, I think, as we discussed when this newest report was reported, right, that Giannis was potentially thinking about leaving, and since then we've even heard from Giannis say, you know what, I'm committed to the Bucks for now, but things could change in 6 or 7 months. So it's like, okay, start getting your trade packages ready. I think the Heat would be hoping to hold on to Kel'el Ware and Bam, potentially. Or maybe you have to include Kel'el Ware, and then it's Bam and Giannis in the front court. But if you end up trading Bam, then I think you have to hold on to Ware, and then it's Ware and Giannis. So whatever, it's one of those 2 guys.
For sure.
Can you like re-sign Norm Powell so that you have something on the perimeter in terms of creation? Can you keep a Davion Mitchell or a Drew Smith? Because we've seen guys that Giannis has played well with, like a Drew Holiday, guys who can fight over those screens, funnel those players into the paint where Giannis can really do his damage as a help side defender. I think you'd want to keep one of those guys. And yeah, maybe there's a Pelle Larsson over here still on the roster, or a Jović over there still on the roster, or something like that. But generally, making this trade, I don't think anything's bolted down to the floor.
Yeah. For the record, I don't think you can make a trade package without Bam Adebayo. Like, maybe that's might be your preference, but I just I don't see any reason why Milwaukee would engage for anything less than a pretty similarly leveled superstar, or somebody at least in the top 30 in the NBA. And I don't think they even need a Tyler Hero necessarily on that roster. I mean, I'm sure they'd love to have somebody like that back. So would it be Tyler? Is that kind of proposing that Tyler would be the core of the package alongside Jović, treasure trove of draft picks, maybe Kel'el Ware?
Yeah, right. I think you'd almost have to include Hero. You'd have to probably include Jović. Honestly, like, if I'm Milwaukee, that's not that bad. If I'm getting Hero, Jović, and like 3 firsts, that's a pretty decent starting point. Understanding that Giannis is, on the, you're never going to get value. Yeah, but you're never going to get value for him. If I'm not getting Bam, if that's the start, I would need more stuff on top of that. But if that's the starting point, I feel pretty good about that.
I don't know. I feel like the Dallas trade kind of set the bar for what not to do, and yet as far as the backlash is concerned, like you have Mavericks fans that still actively feel betrayed by this
Well, and they're
franchise.
blindsided by the organization. Like, if Giannis asks for a
Absolutely.
trade, they will not. Bucks fans will not be blindsided. Like, everybody could see this coming for a couple of years now.
That's fair. And at the same time, I feel like you'd have to at least try to get the best package available.
Mhm.
Not to say that Anthony Davis isn't a good piece to get back in exchange for Luka, but it's not Luka. Luka's a top 5 player. Um,
Well, who's the best player that you could trade Giannis for? Right? Like, you're not getting Luka back for Giannis. And that was the thing with Anthony Davis is kind of the best player that you could trade Luka for.
Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, maybe something like that. I could see that. Yeah, perhaps, right? Is Milwaukee interested in rebuilding around Jaylen Brown making $60, $70 million a year? You
Jaylen
know?
Brown, Derek White, and picks for
It
Giannis.
would suck if Giannis ended up in Boston. I don't even want to talk about it.
Oh, oh, whatever.
All right.
Yeah,
So
not looking forward to that. We're getting PTSD even just talking about this stuff.
time to move on.
Yeah.
How can the Heat maximize Bam on offense? We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll take a look at a Lauri Markkanen trade package that hopefully David doesn't reroute into Markkanen ending up with the Boston Celtics. We'll do that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to bucks. And if it hits, well, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You'll love how FanDuel gives you so many different ways to play. You can build parlays, you can try player props, you can even follow the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started, but only when you visit FanDuel.com. We'll be right back.
We might have to speed round these last few mailbag questions here. This one comes from Renato, who writes in, how can the Heat maximize Bam on offense? I feel like we're heading towards a great connection between Jović and Powell, but they need to incorporate Bam more on offense, especially in that stretch without Hero. How can they do that? David, we talked about this a little bit on our on yesterday's episode after look, it's been a rough preseason for Bam shooting wise, right? He's 4 of 18 overall. He was 1 of 9 going into that Spurs game. It's been pretty rough for him. Now, I went back, I watched his shots. It still feels like maybe they're trying to figure out where Bam's going to get his shots other than the free throw line jumpers, those 15-footers that we know he likes to get to. They're designing plays for him. I called this out on yesterday's episode, but in the first minute of that Spurs game, they designed a play that flowed into a pick and pop with Wiggins throwing it back to Bam on the three-point line. Bam got the clean look, missed it, but it was a clean look, and that's really the important part when you're designing those plays. So I like that kind of stuff, but I'll tell you, my favorite moments for Bam in this preseason so far has been when he just has the ball on the perimeter and goes to work. Like, he took Wemby off the dribble a couple of times in that Spurs game, and it ended up being a couple of misses, but I like the aggression. He's got a few straight line dribbles, kind of throws his shoulder into the defender, puts the shot up. I kind of like Bam a little bit more as this bruising physical isolation guy. And when they've done that, they've cleared it out where Bam is on the one side and there's spacing on the other, and he's able to just kind of go to work. He had a nice step back jumper on the baseline in that Spurs game where he puts his shoulder into the guy and then kind of leans back into that baseline fadeaway. I think that might actually be where Bam's offense is, because the Heat don't really have that guy on the roster that's doing that consistently. And I'm wondering if that's something that that Spo could put on Bam's plate.
Yeah, I think it's likely. I just also don't like it. I feel like if they're going to get him to get going offensively, they've got to do more to make his life easier and not just have him self-create all the time, because it feels like that's been the nature of his offense for years now. And it's been a while since we saw Jimmy Butler set screens for a guy like Bam or be able to open things up a little bit. And I think they need to continue to do that in order to get him going. They don't have a ball handler or shot creator that can put the offense and set it up for him to get those scores easily at the basket. I just don't think that they feed him the ball. I wonder how many of his scores are self-assisted. Like, he's just having to generate so much of his own offense instead of if you're making him the focal point, if you want him to be your top scorer, or at least one of the top scorers, instead of just letting him go to work all the time, which may or may not be one of his strengths, you've got to be able to put somebody out there to share the floor with him to make his life a little bit easier and feed him in those situations where he can get it a little closer to the basket and maybe be able to finish at a higher percentage rather than just having to create all the time using his size or speed in order to generate those looks. So I would like for them to actually make him a focal point offensively and be able to create those looks and set him up in order to maximize what he can do, rather than just saying, you know what, we're going to clear out for Bam, let him go to work, because that so often has been the case. Unfortunately, that may lead to a basket because he can generate those looks, but that might not necessarily make him able to finish it at a higher level. And so you want him to be able to at least get somewhat easier looks.
Antonio writes in, is there still a possibility that Kel'el Ware can start so that he can match up against fives, allowing Bam to guard the bigger forwards like Paolo, LeBron, etc.? And then I'll just add to this that you don't have Bam going up against centers all the time. I'm not ruling it out. Just because Jović started the first 3 preseason games, I'm not ruling it out, especially if Ware plays like he did on Wednesday night against San Antonio. But maybe more important than this, than the starting lineup, David, we still haven't seen Bam and Ware play together for a minute in the preseason. I don't think... I'm not overly concerned about that. I just think that that's preseason rotations. We're going to see Bam and Ware play together on the court in the regular season. I'm hoping we see it right away and a lot more often. In fact, I hope it's just one of Spo's go-to lineups. Like, I hope that it is in pen every single night, minutes with Bam and Ware on the floor. It doesn't really matter to me if it starts, if it closes, if it's in the middle, as long as we see it. I look at a team like Houston. They start Alperen Şengün, who's about the same size as Bam at center every night, and they make sure that there's several minutes during the course of the game where Şengün is on the court with Steven Adams or now Clint Capella or whoever. I would like for the Heat to get to that level with Bam, where whatever, it doesn't matter what starting, finishing, whatever, but let's just make sure during the meat of this game there are several minutes where Bam is able to thrive with Kel'el Ware on the floor next to him.
I want to say this almost feels like by design, right? That Erik Spoelstra is holding us out the same way he guards the starting lineup before each game, like a state secret. You almost feel like he's kind of saying, you know what, I'm going to whip out the ultimate, wild card out there and put them both on the same floor, like, almost like his ace up his sleeve, just trying to keep that out of the preseason, because we've seen it before. Like everything that we've seen in the preseason, regardless of the iteration of this team, it's seen. You can throw it all out for game one. None of it makes any difference because he always seems to change something. Whether a player drops in or drops out of the lineup, you never quite know how it's going to play out. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if the opening day or opening night lineup is completely different than any that we've seen up to this point, including Kel'el Ware starting. But a lot of that depends on him. To the question, he has to be able to continue to play at a higher level. What we saw against the Spurs game, we're winning minutes, impactful minutes, something Spoelstra absolutely loves, and that has to continue to be the case. I would say he'd get a start. I would imagine at some point the actual starters, or what we've seen as a starting unit, is going to get a rest. And that being the case, Ware is probably going to be slotted to start. And what he does in that opportunity, I think, is really going to help cement his case as being a potential starter on opening night.
He's, like you said, in preseason, still has a chance to beat Jović for that other starting job. The preseason isn't over, right? Like, he could still do that. And we know Spo will change his lineups throughout the year. Malachi writes in, Lauri Markkanen is back on the trade block from what I'm seeing in Jazz news. Should the Heat be interested? So just to elaborate here, Chris Mannix from Sports Illustrated said that the Jazz are open for business on Lauri Markkanen. Should the Heat be interested? Sort of. I like Markkanen. He makes a lot of sense next to Bam and as a floor spacer. He's going to be making like $50 million. And you just re-signed Jović at $15 million.
Yeah.
And we know what that front offices, that includes Danny Ainge, his son Austin Ainge, Justin Zanuck. We saw what they did with the Gobert trade and the Donovan Mitchell trade. They are going to be asking for a haul, 3 or 4 firsts probably for Markkanen, just to start, right? Just to stay on the phone. That's what you're going to have to open with. And Markkanen is good enough where I think he's going to get a lot of offers from across the league. So I don't really see this for Miami, but he would be a good fit next to Bam, but I don't really see it.
You see him at the 3 or the 4 next to Bam?
Markkanen?
Yes.
He could play either one. I mean, yeah. I mean, he could play either one. Maybe that's. I just don't really see it because of the money he's going to be making and what it's going to cost to go get him. Like, It's one thing if you had Jimmy Butler and Bam still on the roster, but it's like if you add Markkanen into this group, he helps, but it's like I still don't know who the number one guy is. It's not him.
Right. And would you have to include Hero in order to get Markkanen?
You would probably have to move off of Hero somehow. And yeah, you would probably move Hero to Utah or reroute him somewhere else. But yeah, because if it's Hero plus Markkanen plus Bam, that's like $100 million plus. No, wait, like $130 million
right
invested into 3 all-star level players, no true number one option.
Right.
It's tough. It's tough to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't see them actually engaging in that conversation with Ainge. I just don't see it happening.
Cameron writes, if Jović ends up playing with the starters, who's the go-to ball handler playmaker with the second unit? Do you think Davion Mitchell can find another level to his game by elevating his passing during his second year with the Heat? I like what we saw when we saw the Norm Powell plus bench unit against San Antonio. I think that there's something there.
Yeah, I think that works. Is it too early to think that Jović can continue to carve out minutes as well in that regard? Drew Smith certainly seems like he's going to be getting the opportunity. He started against San Antonio, so we know that the staff and Spo love what he brings to the table. So I just see him getting a lot of those opportunities as well. But I think we'll see a mix of different things. Like, I mean, Jaime, who was starting almost as a de facto point guard, he's going to get some opportunities too. He's going to bring the ball up. So you're going to see a lot of different players be able to handle that responsibility. And I think all of them make a strong case in terms of being able to get minutes here and there. But I don't know that any one stands out in any particular regard. I think if we're talking honestly, maybe it's too soon, and I agree with that perspective. But Jović's playmaking ability, at least, is the one thing that all those players does at an elite level. Like Davion Mitchell's a great defender, and we love his attitude and tenacity. But I wouldn't know that he goes so far as to say, because of his size limitations, he's not necessarily an elite defender from my perspective, just because he's not entirely switchable. He does yeoman's work trying to guard bigger players, but ultimately he's going to give ground because of his size. And I don't see that any of the other players does anything really elite. Like Drew does a great job making winning plays, but that's not necessarily an elite skill either. But Jović at this point does add something to the table that nobody else on this roster does, which is able to make plays for the others and be able to create real assists that help people score in a much easier way. And finding ways for him to carve out some playing time, I think feels important for this team moving forward.
Between Norm Powell, eventually when Tyler Hero comes back, Davion Mitchell, Drew Smith, you're going to have one of those guys. And I know we always talk about second units. It's important to remember, very rarely do you just see a whole second unit out there, right? Spo's going to make sure that there's a starter in there with that group for the most part. So, especially when Tyler comes back, I would imagine he's going to stagger Hero and Norm Powell pretty aggressively. So as long as you have one of those guys on the court too, that solves a lot of the spacing, playmaking concerns. And then to your point, like if a Jović or a Drew Smith or a Davion Mitchell can help facilitate a little bit in a complementary role, bring the ball up even, and kind of help set those guys up, I think that's probably the answer to that question. That'll do it for us today. Thanks to everybody who submitted questions for our mailbag. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here at the beginning of next week.